This is Fielder doing a sound check. Can you hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
Loud and clear.
Excellent, thank you.
Good afternoon. This meeting is called to order. For the record, the time is 1:30 p.m. The date is February 3rd. The commission and staff are appearing from Helena in the Bollinger Room of the Montana Public Service Commission. I am Jeff Wellborn. I'll be the presiding chairman for this meeting. Would you please all join me in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance? We have Vice President Fielder joining us online, Commissioner Pinocci, Commissioner Bukasek, and myself are in the room. I determine a quorum is present. First of all, we will move into public comments. We do have some public commenters in the room today. First, I would like to welcome Mr. Harold Holm. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and members of the commission. Is this working all right? Okay. My name is Harold Hoem, H-O-E-M. I was born and raised in Butte, Montana, and currently live in Missoula. I am a residential ratepayer of Northwestern Energy and testified at the recent, and I might add, very well attended IRP session in Missoula. I am here to address concerns about data centers being proposed in Montana. These worries are amply expressed in a correspondence sent to you January 16th, 2026, from the Council of Commissioners of the City County of Butte Silver Bowl. I fully support their requests as follows. Number one, establish or require a separate rate class and tariff for very large electric loads. 2, ensure written binding protections are in place to prevent boom or bust risk and stranded costs from being shifted to existing ratepayers. And 3, maintain strong reliability safeguards so that service to large new loads does not adversely affect current customers and the economic stability of key local employers. 4, insist on a transparent process to ensure that the public understands what is being proposed and the potential impacts. I'm proud of my old city and think what they said will benefit other Montanans. Thank you very much.
As a member of a former resident of the sacred city, I know what you're talking about, sir. Next, we have Jan Hoyam. Welcome.
Directions. That's good. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jan Hoem, H-O-E-M. I was a teacher in many years of rural EMT. As you know, you have the power to rein in some of the unwise and unfair choices Northwestern Energy is proposing to make. Exercising that right has never been more important than it is today. In terms of recent choices Northwestern Energy has made, their decisions have them racing to the bottom compared to other states by sticking with fossil fuels. By 2042, they will be left with a wallet full of stranded assets. And where will their customers be then? It's scary to think about. The time to change direction is now, and that's why your role is so important. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for coming in today and sharing your thoughts with us. Next online, we have Karen Kirk. Public comments. Welcome, Ms. Kirk.
Thank you very much, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to comment. My name is Karen Kirk, last name spelled K-I-R-K. I'm a geologist and an energy journalist, and I live in Bozeman. I'm also on the steering committee of Montanans for Affordable Energy. And I want to share with you the results of my most recent analysis because I think you're going to find it exactly relevant to your work as commissioners. And this is about data centers, which is a really important topic, but also a confusing one. So I started by looking at electricity prices in the US from 1997 through the present. The data is from the Energy Information Administration. The prices are broken out by sector, tracking residential, commercial, and industrial prices for electricity. And I'll describe the data because when I saw it, I was like, it's wild. And it's exactly what a lot of people are worried about. From 1997 through 2008, the prices for all three sectors track together. So looking at the change in price over time, those three lines just run parallel with the ups and downs. That seems fair. But then things really changed. In 2008, electricity prices went up for residences, but down for businesses and industries. Over the next decade, household uses of electricity became more and more expensive, while electricity prices for businesses stayed nearly flat. Not very fair. But it got worse. It is getting worse. In 2021, the trend shifted again. Electricity prices for all three sectors began to rise pretty steeply, but very unequally. The gap between home energy use prices and business and industrial energy prices became even larger. Since 2021, these differences have become especially stark, and it's actually quite maddening to look at this data and look at the lines going off in opposite directions. So in just 2 years, starting in 2022, residential electricity prices rose by 10%. Meanwhile, commercial prices increased only by 3%, and industrial electricity prices fell by 2%. So again, the lines going in opposite directions with very different experiences for different classes of user. Hopefully you're wondering, well, what is that? What about demand? The sectors that are raising the demand should be the sectors that are maybe paying for it. So I looked at demand from all three sectors, and it actually paints an even worse picture. Commercial demand for electricity rose sharply and steadily, using 9% more power over just the last 3-year span. That's coming from data centers. I confirm that with EIA. In that exact same time period, residential demand rose only by 1%. So if we reflect on that, household electricity has grown the least of the three sectors, but that's where the prices have gone up the most. What's troubling here is that we keep hearing from both like the commenter you just heard and regulators and even Northwestern Energy saying this should not be happening. Data centers should pay their own way. Households should not be subsidizing data centers. But this data shows that it's happening anyway. And what it really shows is that so far, rulemaking has been insufficient to protect everyday people, despite everyone's best intentions. It's just not working. Part of the problem is that tech companies can make deals in secret. The public has no idea what sort of prices data centers are paying and what types of deals are being given. And that seems particularly at the heart of the problem because, as ratepayers, we have no recourse. We're sort of locked in with Northwestern Energy, but on the side, then they're making these secret deals, and that just seems a very unequal treatment. And if you look at the letters of intent, which obviously you have, they're totally blacked out. So these negotiation practices are deceptive, and I think they're really hurting everyday people. And I know you mean well, and you intend to protect us captive ratepayers, but so far that's really not working. The public deserves transparency on this, and tech companies, they can build wherever they want. And that means that somewhat regulators and utilities are trying to welcome them and draw them in. But the rest of us can't do that, right? We're stuck with Northwestern Energy, and we're stuck with the bill, and we're stuck with the burden of pollution from their fossil fuel resources. So the situation is really out of balance. And this is partly why public sentiment has turned so strongly against data centers. So I urge you to bring more transparency and fairness to this process. People are really looking to you for reassurance. Montanans should not be subsidizing billion-dollar tech companies. We should not be breathing in the pollution that comes from their unquenchable thirst for energy. So I urge you to please do more to protect everyday Montanans. Thank you very much for this opportunity to comment.
And thank you, Ms. Kirk. Seeing no further public commenters, Commissioner Molnar has joined us. So we have all 5 commissioners present or present in the meeting today. And there are no changes to our agenda. And if no other commissioners have any announcements to make, I would like to just send, on behalf of the commission, our hearts out to the family of longtime Butte legislator Fritz Daly, who passed away last week. Those of us that knew Fritz, he and I served at different periods of time in our legislative careers, but also worked together on stuff. He remained a tireless advocate for the community of Butte. Fritz was, I guess I could best describe him as a Democrat's Democrat. There was a lot of policy things that we may not always agree on, but he was always respectful. And Fritz had a motto that they were more than words to him, but something that he lived by. And I think it went something to this effect, that the only thing worse than bad people doing bad things are when good people do nothing about it. And that's the way Fritz lived his life. And again, our hearts go out to his family, and Montana has lost another authentic leader. Rest easy, Fritzy. Next on our agenda today is the approval of the minutes from January 26th. Has everyone had a chance to read through the minutes? Are there any corrections or additions?
Mr. President, I will move adoption of the minutes for the week of January 26, 2026.
Thank you. It's been moved by Vice President Fielder. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we will move into our first work session item. And today we've got docket 2025.11.084, Montana Environmental Information Center's formal complaint against Northwestern Energy to discuss setting a deadline for Northwestern's response to MEIC's complaint. Teresa.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, I am Teresa Omens, a staff attorney here at the Commission. On November 17th, 2025, several entities jointly filed a complaint against Northwestern Energy, alleging that Northwestern's practices and acts with respect to the provision of electricity supply service to data center developers are unreasonable, insufficient, and contrary to Montana law. Once the commission receives a complaint, it must evaluate whether the complaint is in substantial compliance with the procedural rules and states a cause of action within the commission's jurisdiction. Under the commission's rules, the complaint is required to list the contact information for the complainant and defendant, include a clear, concise statement of the respect in which any practice is unjust and unreasonable, and the particular relief desired. Staff believes the complaint filed meets these limited criteria. It is important to note that this is not a determination of the validity or credibility of the allegations contained in the complaint. This is a determination that the complaint contains the required contents. If the complaint contains the required information, then the commission is required to serve a copy of the complaint to the defendant and require the defendant to satisfy or answer the complaint within 20 days. Northwestern will then have the opportunity to respond to the complaint with either satisfaction, such as fixing the alleged unjust and unreasonable practices, or answer the complaint denying the allegations. We are still in the initial stages of this docket, and how Northwestern responds to the complaint will determine the next steps required in the docket. As I stated previously, this is not a determination regarding the substance of the complaint. This is a determination that there is sufficient information to allow the process to proceed. Therefore, staff recommends the commission require Northwestern to satisfy or answer the complaint within 20 days. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions from commissioners?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Teresa, you just used the phrase to allow the process to continue. I'm assuming if they say, you're right, we're not going to do that anymore, the process ends. And I'm assuming if they say, what we're doing is absolutely legal, the process goes on. If that happens, what is the end of the process? Where do we come in as a commission?
Mr. President, Commissioner Molnar, if Northwestern, I'll use the term satisfies the complaint because that's the language in the rule. If Northwestern satisfies the complaint and, as you said, agrees that what they're doing is incorrect or what have you, they will have to come before us and say, this is how we satisfied the complaint, and we then have to determine that that does sufficiently satisfy the complaint. If they answer the complaint and say what we're doing is perfectly fine, then we enter into a somewhat contested case process where we go into data requests and discovery and potentially a hearing.
Thank you.
Further questions?
Thank you, Mr. President.
Commission.
It's not a question per se, but I just wanted to say you've stated twice, we are not today addressing any of the substance of the complaint. We are simply whether or not the complainant complied with the requirements, and that therefore compels us to direct Northwestern to satisfy the complaint.
Satisfy or answer, correct?
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Further questions from the commission?
Mr. President,
Yeah, go ahead.
I move to approve the notice of commission action and authorize staff to make any non-substantive changes or edits necessary to issue the notice.
Thank you, Vice President Fielder. Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Question? I have a question.
Go ahead.
The wording of this, Mr. Chairman, is to discuss setting a deadline for Northwestern's response. We haven't done that. Exactly how does the motion satisfy picking a deadline?
Mr. President, if I might answer that question, Commissioner Molnar, under the statute, we're required to give Northwestern a 20-day deadline to respond to that complaint. Theoretically, the commission could decide that the complaint should just be thrown out. And so that is why the work session was described as discussing setting a deadline. But as described in the notice of commission action, there is a 20-day deadline for Northwestern to respond or satisfy.
So the motion is good enough.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Mr. President, the paragraph 3 of the notice of commission action specifies the date that Northwestern would be required to respond.
Thank you for that background. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Number 2 on the agenda today is the commission initiated. It would be Northwestern Energy's 2026 IRP consultant to discuss the issuing of requests for proposals. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. President and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Haley Gobert, and I am an analyst in the Regulatory Division. At the December 16th, 2025 business meeting, the Commission authorized staff to begin developing an RFP for a resource planning consultant to assist the Commission in reviewing Northwestern's upcoming IRP expected in April. Staff has worked with the State Procurement Bureau to prepare a draft RFP, a copy of which is included in your work session materials. Under the RFP, the contract would begin April 1st, 2026 and conclude by October 31st, 2026. That timeframe is intended to provide the Commission flexibility if there are any changes to Northwestern's intended IRP file date. The contract also includes an estimated not to exceed amount of $275,000. This amount is intended to ensure the RFP attracts sufficient bids given the compressed timeline required by House Bill 55. The statement of work requires the consultant to provide a written report containing an independent and objective analysis of the plan and recommendations for comments that the Commission could issue to Northwestern and ways to remedy those concerns. The report also must include an evaluation of how the 2026 plan addressed the deficiencies identified by the Commission in the 2023 plan. As we discussed back in December, House Bill 55 requires that within 120 days of receipt of a complete IRP, the Commission must review the plan, provide a copy of the plan, or publish a copy of the plan, and provide at least 60 days for public comment, and provide 2 public meetings. The Commission comments identifying deficiencies in the IRP must also be completed within the 120-day timeframe. I would also highlight that Northwestern's 2026 IRP will be its first plan subject to the Commission's new resource planning rules adopted in 2023. Because of the timing with the rulemaking for House Bill 5597 from 2019, Northwestern's 2023 plan was developed under the Commission's old default electric supplier procurement guidelines. Staff recommends that the Commission approve issuing the RFP and allow staff to make clerical non-substantive changes as necessary. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thanks, Haley. Questions from the Commission?
I have one, Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead. And I think
Thank you. Haley, can you just remind us of the appropriation that was allocated to the agency specifically for this, to the Public Service Commission specifically for this work? Was it the $275,000 that you mentioned that's capped in the RFP, or is it different?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, in the previous biennium, the Commission requested $200,000 in spending authority for our state special revenue fund. Because we anticipated this filing. With the passage of House Bill 55, an additional $200,000 was appropriated to the agency from the general fund, intending to help with this streamlined process. So in total, the agency has access to $400,000, although we don't intend or anticipate needing that much. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a cap in the contract that is of $275,000.
Okay, and a follow-up, Mr. President.
Follow up.
Haley, is this, the budget allocation for this isn't just for the Northwestern IRP, it's for the other utility IRP as well, isn't it?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I believe so. The way the bill is written is, the appropriation is to carry out the requirements of this act. So it could be used for another IRP if the commission were expecting one, but I believe we aren't expecting any other filings. And so it would just go to Northwestern's IRP.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions from the commission?
Thank you, Mr. President. So you've answered my questions very, very well in our discussions and everything you've done here. You did a fabulous job, so I appreciate that. So if you could reiterate in brief, in order to promote the public's understanding, what is the difference in the scope of the PSC and the IRP process 2023 versus 2026 due to the implementation of House Bill 55?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, as I mentioned earlier, Northwestern's 2023 plan was developed under the Commission's old resource planning rules. And so their new plan, expected in April, has been developed under the Commission's new resource planning rules adopted in 2023. There were a few minor changes also in House Bill 55, including, I believe, in the first or second section that changes minimum. Sorry, let me backtrack. So I had mentioned the 120-day time frame it starts with the receipt of a complete plan. And so there's a change in an earlier section for minimum filing requirements for a plan. And so staff has interpreted that as being more similar to the process the agency does with the filing of a rate case, where if those minimum filing requirements aren't met, the filing is kicked back to the utility, and until the minimum filing is updated, to conform with the requirements, it's not considered complete. And then once the utility has made those changes, it is a complete plan. So that's kind of the one large change I would say from the passage of House Bill 55 is just changing kind of how that initial part works.
Follow up?
Follow up.
So our current compressed timeline, it's based on House Bill 55. It's not based on anything having to do with the commission or the utility.
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct. The passage of House Bill 55 created this 120-day timeframe for the commission to complete its work on an IRP. Previously, when House Bill 597 was passed in 2019, it had removed the commission's requirement of a deadline. I believe before that, the commission completed its work in about 9 months or so, or was required to, for an IRP. And so now we're back to having a time frame to complete our work.
Follow up?
Follow up.
Thank you, sir. And in addition to the timeline change from House Bill 55, there's also been an increase in scope, is my understanding, because in 2023, we hired an analyst and it was for a very limited scope. And this is going to broaden the scope. Would you mind in brief discussing that difference?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, so I would say kind of the broader scope that we're looking at, with having new resource planning rules, that this plan is subject to hiring a consultant will help staff make that determination in the evaluation so that the commission can ultimately issue comment on the plan. And also, given the agency's expected workload for the next 6 months to a year, staff believes it's unlikely we could meet the legislature's mandate of 120 days of completing that work without hiring a consultant.
Thank you.
Thanks, Haley. Further questions from the commission?
I do have another one, Mr. President.
Yeah, go ahead.
As I recall from our previous go round with the last IRP review on Northwestern Energy, we held several public hearings. I think we were required under statute to hold two. Has that changed? Are we still required to hold two, or is it more? How does I'm just kind of wondering how this new process affects our ability to hold public hearings.
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, the legislature didn't change that requirement. The agency is still required to hold two public meetings, although generally the commission has always held one meeting in every commissioner's district, just for transparency and engagement with the public. But the agency is only required to hold two. And the legislature made the change to try to front load the public meetings onto the utility and make that the utility's burden. And I believe Northwestern has been holding public meetings in advance as their draft IRP is currently publicly available.
Okay, thanks for answering that. That was something Commissioner Bukacek raised earlier in an email that she sent around. And I noticed that Northwestern is holding public meetings and was wondering whether the commission was going to be expected to hold as many as it did last time. And to me, it looks like bandwidth wise and with the time constraints, that's might not be feasible for us to go out and do that outreach, but it's good that the utility is doing that. And I think some of the public commenters earlier today commented on their participation in that process as well. So hopefully this RFP can be issued. I'll definitely support it and we can get moving along quickly. Thanks to the staff for getting ahead of this. So we're well prepared to start on day one when completed IRP is accepted by the commission.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none, I would certainly entertain a motion to direct staff to do this.
Mr. President, I'll move that the commission authorize staff to issue the RFP for consulting services.
All right, is there a second?
A second?
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. President, I'll just add that I will leave this to our procurement and regulatory staff to work out the details on when and how they're going to issue this.
Thank you. Commissioner Bukacek.
Just a brief comment. Just wanted to say again, staff did a great job. And an IRP analyst is going to be a great benefit to all of us. So, and thank you, Haley, and the other staff.
Yeah, thanks, Haley, and your entire team for all that you've done and all that's yet to come, probably more so. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, moving to number 3 on our agenda today, relating to docket 2025.09.072, Montana Dakota Utilities, the MDU rate case to consider MDU's motion for reconsideration of the commission's decision to deny the interim rate relief.
Yes, good afternoon, President Wellborn and commissioners. My name is Tim Nerstad, and I'm an analyst on staff here at the PSC in the Regulatory Division. And today I'm alongside Teresa Omens, our staff attorney. In your work materials today is a staff recommendation on MDU's motion for reconsideration of the commission's decision that occurred on December 16th. And that was to deny MDU's interim request in docket 2025 09072. Staff recommends that the commission reconsider its decision on December 16th and grant MDU's interim request of 10.4 million effective on an interim basis. And this is because MDU has provided the information required by statute and rule. If approved, this would increase the monthly bill of the average residential customer by $14.09 or 15.7%. If the commission does agree to reconsider its decision but does not approve MDU's interim request in full, in that case, staff would recommend that the commission approve an interim request of interim revenue increase of 9.2 million, which reflects a rate of return of 7.097%, which is the last rate of return approved by the commission in MDU's last rate case. Staff estimates that if this scenario were to be approved by the commission, that this would increase the monthly bill of the average residential customer by $12.45 or 13.9%. And we're available for any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Tim. For questions from the commission. Commissioner Bukasek.
I have quite a few. So I think this first portion, it would be for regulatory. So in your analysis portion on page 2, staff clearly lined out what interim rate increases are guided by, as you said. And on page 2 to 4, you lined out how MDU has met those guidelines or guideposts. Is that correct?
President Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct. Based on staff's analysis, we feel that they just completely and fully met all those requirements for interim relief.
And based on PSC precedent, full scrutiny of prudency is addressed in full rate cases, not interim. Is that correct?
President Wellborn, Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct. Staff's recommendation for this interim decision is did not take into account at all any assessment of prudency of any of the investments.
Appropriately so. So staff kindly offered on page 5 an alternate to the full request of MDU. And in footnote 35, at the bottom of page 5, there's a details as to why PSC staff recommends the full interim request and not this alternative. To the extent possible, I'd like you to explain in layperson's terms the reason you recommend the full interim request instead of the alternative. And I say to the extent possible in layperson's terms because the concepts that you incorporate into your recommendation involves items laypersons are generally not used to thinking about, like updated capital structure, cost of equity, cost of debt.
President Wellborn and Commissioner Bukacek, the staff's interim recommendation does the primary recommendation to approve the interim request in full is because that interim request reflects the most updated information in terms of their cost of debt and also capital structure. And it's, I guess just a simple way of saying it is that it's just more up to date and more relevant, more accurate. And the secondary recommendation, if the first one were to be denied, is just basically staff's acknowledgement that it would be a better outcome in terms of the health of the utility to get some relief as opposed to just no relief at all.
Okay, and follow up on that. If you could, let's see, it reflects the most updated information, which has to do with the different expenses. And the cost of debt, that has to do with, my understanding is the percentage of interest on loans that tend to be charged to the utility. Is that accurate?
That's correct, Commissioner Bukacek. Yeah, the cost of debt is the interest amount that is that goes to debt investors. Yeah, so yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, and then the cost of equity, that has to do with a different set of investors. And so when a company under earns, which MDU has been doing, under earning, that increases the cost of debt for the company, it increases the cost of equity, and that can increase the cost to ratepayers ultimately, because that's part of cost of doing business. Is that correct?
President Wellborn, Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct. Yeah, if the if the cost of debt or the cost of equity increases, then that will impact the rates for sure.
If we continue to cause them to under earn. Okay, so the reference December 16th, 2025 vote by the PSC is considered by MDU legal staff to be an arbitrary and capricious abuse of discretion because it is not based on legal standards as set forth in statute, PSC administrative rules, and PSC precedent. And it seems to me on the same basis that the alternative partial relief might be considered arbitrary and capricious. So another question I have of your alternative that is not your preference, and I realize that, is there anything in statute or rule that holds us to prior ROE that was approved in MDU's last general rate review?
Yes, there are rules there is a specific rule for interim decisions that it does need to be based on the last approved ROE, which was 965. And yeah, basically the ROE in both scenarios is the same, but the overall rate of return is different when you take into account in the MDU's interim request reflects the request of 10.4 that does reflect more updated cost of debt, but they both reflect a 965 ROE.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I have questions for legal.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Ted. Teresa, this is a three-part question. Generally established principles of utility rate regulation are in part based on Hope and Bluefield Supreme Court cases that, in general, summary, that utilities must be given the opportunity to earn a fair rate of return on their investments. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, yeah, that's correct. That's what those two cases stand for.
Okay, so in layperson's terms, can it be said that legally we at the PSC are not allowed to let utilities under earn?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, I think the generally established principle is that there's a fair and reasonable rate of return. I don't like the term under earn, but fair and reasonable rate of return is what we're set to or required to allow them. Yes.
So there can be rates that are too low. We could approve rates, or not approve, but we could choose rates that are too low.
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, we could approve rates that are unreasonably low. Yes.
Thank you. More questions? This is a four-part question. There is nothing in Montana law that requires the commission to make a determination on prudency in order to approve interim recovery. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct.
And it is anticipated that MDU's full rate case will be heard July 2026. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's the anticipated date. Yes.
And as staff receives ongoing information for the full rate case, they will be scrutinizing prudency of MDU's investments. Is that also correct?
Mr. President, Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct.
So the interim rates serve to ensure MDU has a sufficient ROR while the prudency of its investments is reviewed.
That's correct.
Okay. And then if they end up that this estimate that they make that they need ends up being an overestimate, then customers will get a refund with interest.
That's correct.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner Molnar.
Thank you. I think this will be for the legal part. I'll get to you in a minute, young man. You just said that we do not have a right to look at prudency until we get to the rate case. I asked you to send me all of the arms and the statutes concerning that, and everything I find seems to dispute that. Where do you find in print, in arm or statute, that we may not consider prudency at any juncture on the path to a full rate case?
Mr. President, Commissioner Molnar, I believe my answer to Commissioner Bukacek was that there's nothing that requires us to consider prudency for an interim. And so that the reasoning for that is a lack of a statute, there's not a statute that says we can't. There's a lack of a statute requiring us to review prudency for an interim rate.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, Teresa, 693304 was mentioned quite a few times in MDU's responses and in your conversations with the commission. First, the commission may, at its discretion, temporarily approve increases or decreases pending a hearing or final decision. That is tied to with using consistent standards appropriate for the nature of the case pending, and shall be an intermediate agency action subject to judicial review under MAPPA. I think we have a lot of discretion to look at anything we want to according to this, and they can challenge us if they want to, particularly prudency. Am I not right? Am I incorrect? Yeah. Okay. I'll use good English as long as I'm here at the table. Please elucidate.
Mr. President, Commissioner Molnar, the commission does have discretion for what it considers an interim rates. However, I will point out that discretion can be considered arbitrary and capricious by a court. And so there are, although not statutory bounds, there are bounds to what can be considered.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Womans, can you tell me at what point a court cannot do something they want to? And we might have to challenge that as well. Is that not within the standards of what judges and courts can do? They also have discretion, as we do.
Mr. President, Commissioner Molnar, I never try to guess what a court thinks it can and cannot make a determination.
Okay, and I think this will be my last one for you. 385506, criteria for approval of request. Sub 3, sub C, which is mentioned in several times by MDU and yourself to us. Section C, there must be a clear showing that deferred rate relief would result in irreparable financial harm to the petitioning utility. If we were to deny today and allow at the general rate case, or should they challenge us and ask us to reconsider again, the money that we're talking about, why would that be irreparable?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, just that. If you owe your child $5 for allowance and he doesn't wash the car, so you withhold $3. And then he says, yeah, but I've been good. And you give the $3 back. It wasn't irreparable. It was just delayed. Which is the purpose of an interim, is to determine whether or not finances will be delayed until the final hearing, and the final hearing determines whether or not it's delayed or granted, or rejected or granted. How would this be irreparable?
Mr. President, Commissioner Molnar, I believe what the statute is getting after is irreparable harm in the interim. For example, their investors not earning the rate of return that they're due, or for maybe loans not being able to be paid as they should be. I don't have a lot of examples for you, but it's irreparable harm during the pendants of the rate case.
Further question, I lied, I got another one. Now look what you've done. Do you have any examples where they have said that they will be financially harmed, they can't make payments, they can't meet a loan, can't make payroll, they've got natural gas that's going into their generators and coal into their generators and they can't make their payments? Is there any evidence that we're aware of that would happen, that it would be irreparable?
Mr. President, Commissioner Molnar, I believe that the presentation Tim made on December 16th and what he expanded on today is really the ROE and ROR that they are under earning on, is really their irreparable harm during this rate case.
I guess we'll discuss that further at some point. Mr. Chairman, I have a question or two for Tim.
Go ahead.
Tim, we've discussed this at some length, and I got to tell you, you have educated me a lot in the last couple of days. However, you were, I believe, on staff in 2024. Was that correct? Is that correct?
President Wilborn, Commissioner Molnar, that's correct.
Were you part of the discussions on MDU's natural gas rate case?
President Wilborn, Commissioner Molnar, I was. However, I don't think it would be appropriate to get into the details of another rate case.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if I'm going to get into the details. One of the things I raised last time, so I think it's appropriate this time, is we'll be taking a rate increase in the middle of winter. It was just 35 below up in the northern part of MDU's Montana customer rate base. Throughout the 24 discussions, I think there was 3 interim rate case discussions in 24 and 1 the first week of 25. The effects on the customer during the winter seem to be, I've watched them all, the primary reason that all of the interim rate relief was denied for 1. Do you recall that?
President Wilborn, Commissioner Molnar, I do recall that case, and I do recall some discussion. I don't remember exactly if it was brought in under the umbrella of the rate-making principle of rate shock, but I do seem to recall that. Yeah, that was a consideration. I believe that the commission.
Further question, how would this be different?
President Wilborn, Commissioner Molnar. How would this be different? I mean, basically, staff assessed, you know, I mean, the commission potentially, the commission decision could be different, but, you know, staff does look at each case individually and makes a recommendation, and decisions by the commission don't always reflect what staff's recommendation was for any particular interim application.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to rephrase the question. I'm just going to re-ask it. What would be different? This is a wintertime rate case. That was a wintertime rate case. Rate shock to ratepayers at a time when they are most vulnerable seemed to be the overarching argument each and every time. What is so different between these 2 wintertime rate cases?
President Wellborn, Commissioner Molnar. Don't quote me on this. I do seem to recall.
Too late, you're talking to the microphone.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've got the transcript going. I think that case was, I think it was a gas, gas during the winter that kind of went into some commission thought about, is this rate shock? Is this too much at this time during the winter when the loads are up? I think it, gas versus electric.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion if that's okay.
Well, can we
Okay.
finish commission questions first of
Certainly,
staff?
Yeah,
I withdraw.
thank you.
So I remember the MDU case 2024 quite well, October, and staff had recommended to pass the interim at that time, correct?
President Wellborn, Commissioner Bukacek, that's correct.
So
That's
their
correct.
recommendation for that winter case is the same as the recommendation for this winter case, which is to pass, to approve the interim increase.
I believe that's correct, yeah.
Okay. And then I remember very well, okay, so it failed 4-1 in, it was end of October, beginning of November 2024. 3 months later, exact same case, exact same staff recommendations, and it passed 4-1. Is that your recollection?
That is my recollection.
Thank you. It's accurate. So in terms of irreparable harm to this,
Can you please turn on the microphone?
in terms of irreparable harm to this small utility company that provides life-sustaining services, is it feasible that continuing to force MDU to under-earn, that there could be reliability and rate increases, issues for the consumers?
President Wellborn, Commissioner Bukacek, I don't believe that if this interim were to be denied, that it would affect reliability. I think, those, this interim application, there's a 2024 test year, 2025 known and measurable period. Those investments were made. Those investments are in service, serving customers. I believe that, I don't believe that those would still be in service, and those customers would still get the benefit of those investments, whether or not the interim is approved. I believe that.
Okay, thank you.
Vice President Fielder, did you have a question?
I do have a couple for staff before we get into commission deliberation. Thank you.
Certainly.
I see that our interim chief legal has moved up to the table along with legal counsel Uman. So I think this first question is legal, and that is that it is my understanding that the statute provides the commission discretion to authorize interim rate. The commission's not required to authorize any interim rate. Is that correct?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, that is correct. The commission is not required to issue an interim rate.
Okay. And then this might be more for regulatory, but it's my understanding that the interim rate provision is available to the commission to allow a bridge, so to speak, so that the utility can recover those past expenditures while the rate case is undergoing a full level of scrutiny. And your alternative that you've suggested here would provide a bridge for some of those investments that were made that are currently serving customers and help kind of get over the hurdle of the regulatory lag of making the company wait until the rate case is concluded. Is that correct?
President Wellborn, Vice President Fielder, that's correct. Yeah, the interim request, the interim application is exactly that. It's a bridge from when, they requested rates effective January 1st, 2026. The cutoff for the capital investments that are reflected in those proposed new rates is the end of 2025. And as the year progresses and the rate case moves along, it's to provide them an opportunity to earn authorized returns that the commission's approved during that period until a final order is approved.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go out on a limb here with a legal question, and I may get shut down, and that's fine. But I noticed that MDU argued that the commission's decision to deny the full interim rate request back in mid-December, they characterized that as an arbitrary and capricious decision. My decision on December 16th was because I felt that full scrutiny was necessary before I felt like I could in good conscience approve multi-million-dollar increase, especially the full increase that MDU had presented to us, or the full interim rate they had presented to us, which I think was somewhere around 80% of their total rate case. So my question for staff is do you think it's an accurate characterization to call something arbitrary and capricious if the commission is desiring to complete scrutiny before it makes a decision?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I will refrain from giving legal advice in my answer, and kind of sidestep the arbitrary and capricious question. But I will say that one way that we can help MDU understand any decision that the commission makes today is if the commission orders us to issue a written decision or written order that accompanies that decision. And that will allow us to fully vet out and support that decision, which I think no matter what the decision is, that written order always helps support and avoid that arbitrary and capricious allegation.
Okay, good point and a fair point. Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further questions? Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to try a motion at this time. Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, staff is directed to issue a written decision on the interim rate based on a 40% of annual depreciation value of the 3 wind projects, Badger Wind, Diamond Willow, and Cedar Hills. All other costs, including the rebuild of the transmission line from Baker to Glendive, are to be credited as requested. Mr. Chairman, I would like to defend this at the proper time. You want me to read it again? Okay. Mr. Chairman, at request of Commissioner Bukacek, I'll repeat. Staff is directed to issue a written decision on the interim rate based on 40% of the annual depreciated value of the 3 wind projects, Badger Wind, Diamond Willow 2, and Cedar Hills. All other costs, including the rebuild of the transmission line from Baker to Glendive, are to be credited as requested, Mr. Chairman.
All other costs are to be.
Well, we're going to accept them and approve them. There are many, the ones, Mr. Chairman, the majority of the discussion between staff and us has been on the 3 wind projects and the transmission project. All the rest seem to be drawing absolutely zero interest or fire. I think that those are probably fairly prudent. And my concern is with the 3 wind projects, and that's, well, I'll go into that if I get a second.
Yeah, Mr. President, was the motion seconded?
No, the motion wasn't. Is there a second?
I will second.
It has been moved and second, and now discussion, please.
Mr. Chairman, oh, can I defend this, or what do you want to? She raised her hand before I.
Go ahead.
Okay. This is a little wordy for me, but I think it goes to the various moving parts of this. Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners, my rationale is that the ROE, return on equity for Diamond Willow 2, which has a subnote in my earlier incarnation as a commissioner, I actually made the motion for the approval of Diamond Willow 2. and Cedar Hills wind projects should be consistent with the production, which in the case of wind in that area is at most 40% capacity of the nameplate. During times of high wind, no wind, extreme cold, wind production is most needed and not available, requiring a reliance on other systems, all of which are expensive. System-wide, MISO, which MDU voluntarily joined, the over-reliance on intermittent energy has led to extreme measures to counteract. We've talked about those before. I've read them into the record. Yet MDU determined to double down on intermittent energy. Just, I've got it here somewhere, I guess. MISO sent out a directive or a caution. Wind was underperforming when it was 35 below, and they were only getting 2 gigawatts of generation from wind, mainly out of southern, not the northern tier, which is where these are concerned. They have actually 33 gigawatts of nameplate wind on the system, and only 2 gigawatts were delivered during the cold. So it's not like this is new stuff we're covering. This goes to the prudency, which I've established we are allowed to do. In fact, during the recent cold snap, MISO's wind fleet of 33 gigawatts of wind produced only 2 gigawatts of electricity, and yet all of the ROEs had to be met. We can assume that the majority of this was from the southern reaches of MISO. I have now confirmed it. Badger Wind was a purchased project that apparently became operational on the last day of the test year, December 31st, 2024. The amount of underperformance on the ROE can easily be attributed to the payment of $70 million. And apparently it's a big secret as to whether it's 235s or 170 or 10 million a year. We don't know, but it's a good chunk of that had to happen during 24 for the title to transfer. Without income for 2024. Badger Wind made no electricity other than perhaps part of December 31st. Pro forma is used as a rationale for including 2025, which may be assumed that pro forma is not mentioned in any of the PSC statutes or arms. So during that time, 2025, and the wind was being produced, or the wind energy was being produced, they had the option of selling it into the MISO auction and recouping parts of their investment. And I did not see that in any rationale. We don't know what that buy down is, but it certainly was not a ROE of 4 point because they were getting return on investment, though perhaps not ROE. Further, to delete these from the current list of attributes and expenses to determine the interim rate will not be a permanent denial if approved in the final rate determination, that is per ARM 38.5.506. There is no clear evidence that MDU did an exhaustive investigation into alternatives to meet the needs of their Montana consumers. For example, they talk of choosing Badger Wind because it had the necessary permits and connection capacity. The same would have been true to convert the locations for Diamond Willow 2 and or Cedar Hills wind farms to high-capacity generation. The interconnections would have been there as well. We held Northwestern to a standard of what they looked for and sought and considered on Yellowstone. For us now to not hold MDU to the same standard, that would be arbitrary and capricious. And I think that their argument that we gave them 0 and we had to give them some was correct. I don't even know how all this works out because you get into 20 years of depreciation and 30 years of depreciation, and I didn't have time to do it. But whatever it is, this is by my calculation more than fair.
Further discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is interesting, very interesting. I I guess a process question would be, because I haven't seen the rationale laid out in writing and had an opportunity to study it. Has staff had an opportunity to, have our analysts had an opportunity to analyze this scenario being presented here?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, staff has not analyzed the mathematical equation that Commissioner Molnar suggested in his motion.
Okay, let me ask a process question then of staff, if I may, Mr. President, regarding the timing of when a decision on the motion is required. On MDU's motion to reconsider, that is. When is the commission required to make a determination on that reconsideration motion? It's
Mr.
deemed
Chairman, I
granted if
missed
we
the first
don't
part.
act, I
Could you
think.
repeat what you said in the first half of that?
Vice
Yes.
President Fielder, would you repeat the first part of your question?
Yes, I want to ask a process question about when is the commission required to make a determination in response to MDU's motion for reconsideration. And the reason I'm asking that is to know if there's some time to look at this proposal presented by Commissioner Molnar before we make a decision.
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, under our rules, we do have a 20-day deadline to respond to motions for consideration, but that deadline has been waived. Therefore, there is no end date that a decision has to be made by.
Okay, and I guess one other question, if I may, Mr. President, for staff, and that is staff has put forth an alternative kind of a interim rate that's significantly lower than what MDU had requested. And I'm wondering if we were to approve that alternative rate as an interim rate, would the commission still have the ability to consider, as part of the general rate case, implementing some of the provisions or all of the provisions that Commissioner Molnar's proposed in his motion that's before the commission right now?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, I guess if I could clarify, are you suggesting a secondary interim rate or as a final rate?
No, I came into the meeting thinking that in order to help the utility overcome this regulatory lag until the full rate case is concluded, that some level of relief is likely justified in this interim request. And I thought the staff's proposal for the alternative regarding their ROR was more acceptable to me than the full rate request, interim rate that MDU had proposed. And so my thinking was, having had that information before me and had an opportunity to review it and look at my notes and the other documents in this case, I thought that would be all right for the interim now. But if we did do that, does it preclude doing what Commissioner Molnar is suggesting at a future time as part of the full rate case scrutiny?
Mr. President, Vice President Fielder, it's my understanding that that could be implemented at a later date.
That Commissioner Molnar's recommendation or proposal could be implemented at a later date, potentially? Okay. Thank you. I think I'll make a substitute motion, Mr. President, and that is to,
Did you have
I have some discussion first.
Yeah, Commissioner Bukasek had her hand up. So just if you would.
that's fine.
My questions go along the same.
But can you please turn on your microphone, Commissioner?
Yes, my questions and concerns go along the same lines of what you asked. I mean, everybody probably in this room knows that wind often doesn't come through when most needed. We know that. Commissioner Molnar is asking to consider an estimated annual depreciation of 40%. And like you talked about, there's been nothing submitted to the evidentiary record regarding this 40% depreciation. We haven't had an opportunity to analyze it. It would be unprecedented and I think incorrect to make a decision, a vote today based on numbers provided by one commissioner without review.
Mr. Chairman.
And I had a question for the person who made the motion. Or did you want to answer that first?
Yeah, I think you're right. I said depreciated. I was just actually referring to capacity. It says at most 40% capacity of the nameplate. So I may have misstated it up front. I don't think so, but in reading this, the ROE for Diamond Willow should be consistent production, which in this case is wind, is at most 40% capacity of the nameplate during times of high wind. I'm talking capacity. I'm not talking depreciation.
The same statement would hold on my part, though, that we haven't had an opportunity to analyze it. Nothing submitted to the evidentiary record to support what you're saying. And that would be unprecedented and I think improper to make a decision based on something that one commissioner offered during a business meeting as opposed to a head.
This is a temporary rate determination. There are still, I don't know, 4 or 5, 6 steps or interveners to jump in. I'm going to jump in under new issues. So a lot of things aren't determined yet. I know it's 40% because I did Diamond Willow. That whole area is 40%. I'm a part of OMS. That whole area is 40%. The whole thing on 2.1 was based on 40%. All of these are in that area. So whether I drag in a stack or not doesn't, if it turns out to be 30 in one and 50 in another, they can bring that up once we've filed this and they can bring their determinations forward, or you can ask when we get to new issues.
Mr. President, one more comment. I do extensive independent research on many topics. I do it every day. If I were to bring in quotes, percentages from that research that I did that day or that week or that month prior and asked at a business meeting for people to consider voting on something based on my research without them being able to vet it ahead of time, I consider that to be improper. So my point is not about wind or about 40%. It's about providing information the day of a meeting, asking people to vote based on one commissioner's opinion.
Mr. Chairman, there are numerous episodes in which I was told that you can't do this without a single piece of paper. And the people that said that within a work session or two made a motion, brought things forward, and they weren't written down. There was no whatever. I have made a motion. They have made statements. We can pass it, and they can fire back and say, no, it's 50% or 30%, and it won't make any difference because at some point we have to true it up. That is the way you do interims. I am not aware that I am breaking any rule or that everybody, including the commissioner that just raised the objection, always brings in documentation to back up her statements.
Can I ask
Discussion.
what the motion was again? Because I heard Commissioner Molnar state he wanted 40% depreciation and then later said he didn't mean that. So Commissioner Molnar, what is your motion?
Okay, the motion, okay, in the first sentence, you're right. Based on the 40% capacity is what I meant to say, not annual depreciation. I corrected that in the second one. 40% of capacity. So I will read it again with that correction. Staff is directed to issue a written decision on the interim rate based on 40% capacity of the 3 wind projects, Badger Wind, Diamond Willow 2, and Cedar Hills. All other costs, including the rebuild of the transmission line from Baker to Glendive, are to be credited as requested. Rationale. ROE on the Diamond Willow 2 and Cedar Hills wind projects should be consistent with the production, which in the case of wind in that area is at most 40% capacity of nameplate. During times of high wind, no wind, and extreme cold, wind production is needed most and not available, requiring a reliance on other systems. Statewide, system-wide, in MISO, the over-reliance on intermittent energy has led to extreme measures to counteract. Yet MDU determined to double down on intermittent energy. In fact, during the recent cold snap, MISO's wind feed of 33 gigawatts of wind, etc. So I'm going back over the rationale. I apologize. The motion, I believe that's what the commissioner asked for. I'll repeat it. Staff is directed to issue a written decision on the interim rate based on 40% capacity of the 3 wind projects, Badger Wind, Diamond Willow 2, and Cedar Hills. All other costs, including the rebuild of transmission line from Baker to Glendive, are to be credited as requested. Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. President, I would like to make a substitute motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, and before I do, I will say, I think Commissioner Molnar may be on the right track. I appreciate that you're getting out on this issue very early in the rate case proceeding as opposed to waiting until after the hearing to bring these issues up. So I think that's good. And I think that your issues are definitely worth analyzing and considering as we move forward. But for now, I think it would be more appropriate to approve an interim that is based on staff's analysis. And I do not favor the full interim rate requested by MDU, and I voted against it because I wanted further scrutiny on this before approving that. But I do, I can agree that avoidance of regulatory lag is also important, and it's a tool that's been provided to the commission. So what I would like to do is propose or move an alternative or substitute motion, and that is consistent with staff's alternative to not approve MDU's interim request in full, but rather to approve an interim revenue increase of the 9.2 million, which reflects a ROR of 7.097%. This ROR is the same ROR approved in MDU's last rate case, and if approved, it would increase it would reflect approximately 65.2% of the increase requested in MDU's application.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, for the second. Given the lack of other people stepping forward for a second, this might not pass, but I think this is the middle ground on this issue that would allow the utility to recover some of their past expenditures that are currently serving customers, while we allowing the commission to dig in and fully scrutinize the record and raise the issues that the commission would like to raise, or any individual commissioner would like to raise during the proceeding. So I see this as the middle, I guess, the middle ground between the two different ends of the spectrum I think I've seen here in the conversation today. I think that it's a bridge that could lead to accomplishing one or the other, or something in between, going forward as the rate case is fully vetted. So I think this would be helpful if the commission were to support the motion and pass this motion today. I don't think it precludes any of the interest expressed by any of the other commissioners today. It simply allows us to do something that's completely 100% consistent with the commission precedent and the laws and the administrative rules that set boundaries for our proceedings. So I would highly recommend adopting this alternative motion.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Mr. President. So our staff made the recommendation to grant the full requested relief based on MDU meeting the guidelines, based on legal standards as set forth in statute, based on PSC administrative rules and PSC precedent. And we are to base our decisions on statutes, rules, and the evidentiary record, not personal biases and media contrived mob rule, generally based on misinformation. MDU is a small utility company. We have allowed MDU to under-earn more than once.
State your point.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that you maintain decorum as to how there is mob media working its way into this and to who that's aimed at. I think is 100% inappropriate. It has nothing to do with this rate case or anything anybody has said. It is simply inflammatory for the purpose of being inflammatory.
Rein it in, please.
I didn't point
Stick to the
any, I
motion.
didn't paint
Just
fingers.
let's.
May I continue?
You-
with my state? Okay. So it is anticipated that MDU's full rate case will be heard July as staff receives ongoing information for the full rate case. They will be scrutinizing prudency of MDU's investments. This is typically what we do in interim cases. We don't require full scrutiny. I consider it immoral to ask MDU to take another hit. I therefore cannot support this alternate. I consider it to be the better of two evils. I don't see there as being a conscionable middle ground given the history with MDU.
Further discussion?
Well, Mr. President and Commissioner Bukacek, with all due respect, where we're at right now is zero ground for MDU because one vote the commission denied, or excuse me, I think it was a majority vote. The commission denied their request for an interim rate. I haven't heard any commissioner mention changing their vote on that. If that's the case, we'll see, but I haven't. So if you want some relief for the utility, I would suggest supporting the motion that's before us now, because it does provide some relief that's justified by the ROR of 7.097%, which is the precedent set in the last rate case.
Thank you for that background. Further discussion? Go ahead.
I'm not saying the more meager amount wouldn't help MDU. I'm just saying I can't, in this case, support what I consider the better of two evils. The better of two evils, zero versus the decreased rate.
Mr. President, the last vote we took on this was in mid-December, and I believe it was Commissioner Pinocci that made the motion to approve the MDU interim request in full in mid-December. And I'd like to, we've heard from Commissioner Molnar, who has a big chunk of MDU customers in his service territory or his commission district. And I'd like to hear from Commissioner Pinocci on his thoughts on, do you still support the full interim rate request, or would you support this motion for the the reduced interim rate request?
Mr. President, Commissioner Fielder, I was concerned, and I am still concerned about MDU's health. And what I spoke to is that concern of their financial health, and that I have to make sure that my utility is able to serve their customers properly in the future. And I felt that I need to support that rate increase for them to do that. We have a chance to review that later And if there needs to be money to go back to the ratepayer, we can give that back in interest. And I'm still thinking that that needs to be supported, but I am concerned that the utility has a responsibility of trying to put forward the cheapest energy available. The ratepayer is bringing to the ratepayer's attention that we can generate electricity a lot of different ways. We can use coal, we can use nuclear, we can use hydroelectric, we can use wind, we can use solar, and the ratepayer is starting to ask questions about which source of energy is the best deal for the ratepayer. And I have a lot of respect for Commissioner Molnar bringing out that wind does not look like it is the cheapest form of energy to put forward to the ratepayer. And what he's brought out today, and the reason I seconded this, is if we're going to have scrutiny towards Northwest Energy, and we're not applying that same scrutiny fairly to MDU, I think that's a very good point. And I wish I could have heard that opinion when we voted on this before. That is why I seconded this motion. So this puts me in a difficult situation because the ratepayer is starting to ask serious questions. Are we doing our due diligence here to see the cheapest rate and encouraging that cheapest rate for the ratepayer? So I'm going to support President Molnar's motion in this case. Thank you.
Further discussion? I too, back in December, felt like maybe the ask was a little too big. And I do understand that we've got a tool available to us, or the ratepayer does, that if it's determined, through the rate case that we've over collected or overcharged, that there is a rebate. But I guess my thought process was, why lean on over collecting if you don't have to? And I guess I do appreciate the fact that staff has gone back and taken a deep dive into this and coming up with maybe a reasonable alternative. And I believe that what the vice president is offering is a reasonable approach. It does address the regulatory lag. I think it allows us to, it allows the utility to move forward in the confines of regulatory lag. We all know that every household cost we have and cost of running our own businesses has gone up. And I wished I could change that, but if I could probably be selling books. But I can't, unfortunately. And I believe that what, staff is recommending in their alternative here, and it follows along with, it tracks with the vice president's motion and, or substitute motion rather. And for those reasons, I will be supporting that. Further discussion? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner Molnar, I have a question for you that I'd like you to help me out with a little bit. It is very important to me that we're treating MDU the same way we treat Northwest Energy. I want you to tell us a little bit about that some more so I understand that. And I want to make sure that the decision that I make helps encourage that we treat the utilities the same. Expand on that if you could, please. Thank you.
Well,
As a point of order, Mr. President,
Yeah, state your point.
I'd like to ask that the discussion be confined to the motion that's before the commission at this moment. And if that question can be answered in the confines of the motion, which is to approve an interim revenue increase reflecting a ROR of 7.097%, then I think it's fair game. But if we're going to expand the conversation back to Commissioner Molnar's original motion, that would be out of order at this point.
I'm fine with that. I'll call the question.
The question has been called. Would you restate your motion just before we take the vote on it? Vice
Yes,
President, your
yes.
substitute motion.
Yes, Mr. President, consistent with the alternative proposal that staff wrote up in their analysis and memo to the commission, that the commission would approve an interim revenue increase, which reflects a rate of return of 7.097%.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I,
Aye.
I abstain.
Motion, the substitute motion fails. Back to the original motion. Is that,
do you want me to speak to it or
is that,
questions or?
well, I guess I'm going to ask a point of order from our parliamentarian.
Mr. President, if I believe staff just has a clarifying question about the motion, if we could verify that first.
Certainly.
Yes, President Wellborn and Commissioner Molnar. Just a clarifying question, is your motion that the revenue requirement for each of those specific assets be reduced to 40% of the overall request?
Yes.
Thank you.
No, Mr. Chairman, Tim, yes.
All right, we're back on the original motion. Discussion.
Could I ask Commissioner Molnar to answer the question I asked earlier?
Mr. Chairman, seems how we discussed that before, I think that it's proper because of the charges of arbitrary and capricious. Staff recommended disallowance of tens of millions of dollars on top of tens of millions of dollars based on not enough attention was paid to the selection of the types of generators, location, contractors, you name it. In my discussions with Tim today, in asking about how they come up with Badger Wind, it came from their proposal to look at from last year. There was no deep dive. There's been absolutely no discussion from interveners, which are a little bit rare, as in I'll be the first one if I do it. And when I look at the requirements of law, we are to provide affordable, reliable electricity. This is not that. Is it the most inexpensive in the total scope of things? Regulation reserve, which MISO handles it very differently. I really can't even tell you what it is. I don't know. Nobody's looked at it. We are to vote according to our internal policy manual, based on fact and law. The law, I was told, was taken care of, was the overarching on this. I couldn't find it. It is prior decisions, which I didn't go into those. Nobody's challenged them. So I think it's very inappropriate of us to hold Northwestern to one standard on the very next rate case, a very different, extremely lax standard. Yes, they asked for money. Northwestern asked for money, and we are treating that very differently. I want to put us on the same path so that we can do a deeper dive, because I find it totally inappropriate in my own life and in my professional life as a commissioner to say I will take money from her and give it to him and decide later if it was appropriate. I can see the inappropriateness here. Let them bring forward the proof. Let us dig into the proof. I feel funny at the 40%. I'm not sure that that's appropriate. I'm not sure that the way that they looked at Badger in any way meets the criterion. I am dang sure that Cedar Hills and Diamond could have been re-rigged and they could have had reliable. And that goes to the law, most affordable and reliable. So I think, I hope I've answered Commissioner Panucci's question. I don't think I've strayed from that. If there's any further questions, I certainly will accept them.
Mr. President,
Go ahead.
thank you. And for the record, Commissioner Molnar and Commissioner Pinochi, that was completely appropriate because that spoke to your motion. So no problem with that conversation. I would point out that treating Northwestern with great scrutiny was definitely something that the commission did in their rate case. And we did approve an interim rate increase while we were conducting the analysis. And here, what is being proposed is not to do the careful analysis, but instead to approve some kind of a scenario that Commissioner Molnar just threw out here today. And he's not even quite sure this is the right scenario because it hasn't undergone proper analysis. And so I think you're getting the cart before the horse, Commissioner, in proposing this at this point. I think if you were to propose it after careful analysis through the rate case and testimony and bringing witnesses on the stand and asking questions and gathering evidence and completing our data requests and just all of those things and allowing all the parties to participate in the case and do the same process, that then we would have full information and be able to make a decision such as you're proposing today. But what we're being asked to consider today by the utility is an interim rate request, an interim rate without that full scrutiny, and because the scrutiny takes several months to complete. So, I mean, I just can't support your motion today because there's zero evidence backing up whether your figures are correct, whether they're appropriate, whether they're lawful. There's nothing to go by. But what you've said here into the microphone today, there's no evidence to support it that I have seen or that you've presented for us to review. And I think that evidence, there may be evidence available. It's just not available to us at this point. So for that reason, I can't support this motion today. I encourage and look forward to having the discussion as the rate case moves forward. I think it's an important discussion to have, but I can't approve it today without making it, I just don't feel like the commission's able to make a fully informed decision today on that. I'll be
Mr.
voting
Chairman, if I
against
might
that
make
motion.
a brief response to that. Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Fielder, Vice President Fielder, we are going to pass something today, or we stay where we are. Doesn't make any difference whether it's mine or yours, or if somebody else has one. The investigation continues. We just got done with intervener questions, and all of that. Not much happened. I.e., nothing. And there will be a new chance, and I'm going to raise these then. The opportunity for discussion, whether it was your motion or my motion, continues. The only difference is I'm saying that I have not a right but an obligation to take what I know and you know about reliability and affordability and apply it to the application and not take money from people until we are certain that it is proper to do so. That's the only difference. If somebody wants to argue that it's proper to take money from people and promise to pay them back later, depending on what somebody determines, that's theft. We have no right to take money from somebody, have their electricity turned off, their life turned upside down because every pipe in the house froze. Natural gas and electric heat are the same if you don't have it during 35 below. Things freeze, things break, people die. I must reject that. I must stand on affordable and reliable based on fact and based on law. And that's exactly where this is coming from. You can say that I haven't convinced you enough. And I probably never will. There'll always be a question. But in the meantime, I think it's proper to, and I don't mind regulatory lag. Regulatory lag is what makes utilities actually become efficient. Too much, I think, is improper. I don't think this is that. So I stand on what I've said here. Nobody has said I'm wrong. Nobody has inferred that it was improper. Almost everybody here said the exact same thing. I stand on my motion.
Mr. President, very briefly, in addition to having inadequate information, as Vice President Fielder addressed, Commissioner Molnar's motion, if it was voted in, would set a quagmire precedent to call for a vote based on any commissioner, including myself, from my daily extensive research, bringing information from their individual research the day of a business meeting with no opportunity for commissioners and staff an opportunity to analyze that information. We could be here all day. If every commissioner was allowed to come in with what they read that day or what they read that week or the last month, was allowed to bring it in without anyone else being able to vet it. So I'm against this motion for those reasons.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, I'm not sure anybody, including Commissioner Bukacek, has information enough to make a decision with my motion or without. My complaint is North MDU has not brought forward a reasonable, sustainable amount of information for us to make a decision on. So it's our job to make a decision because they asked us to.
Well, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
the information we have is based on the last rate case with MDU and what the commission found to be reasonable and prudent. And obviously that held up to judicial scrutiny because our decision was not brought to the court or overturned. So I think if we had made the wrong decision, it would have been contested and we would have had that brought back to the commission, and we didn't. So the motion I had made, which was voted down, was based on the law and the precedent and the facts and the evidence. And the one that now we're being asked to vote with is just coming out of the blue. And so I'm just going to stay where I was December 16th and not support a interim rate increase because I haven't heard a reasonable option put before the commission other than the alternative that I had moved a few minutes ago that had come at the recommendation of our analysts as an alternative.
Further discussion? Seeing none. I'll call for the question. All in favor of Commissioner Molnar's motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
No. Motion fails.
Mr. President, may I make a third motion of the day?
Certainly.
So I'd make a motion to accept staff's recommendation
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. President. I just want to make sure the record is clear on the last vote. So the motion failed 2-3 with Wellborn, Bukacek, and Fielder dissenting. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Sorry for not
And-
clarifying that.
And I'm sorry for the interruption, Commissioner Bukacek.
Okay,
For the interruption, for sure.
okay, go ahead with your motion.
So I make a motion to adopt staff's recommendation and grant the requested relief, the full relief.
Is there a second? I rule the motion fails for the lack of a second. Under Robert's rules, there's something to consider. If there is an appetite to do something here besides an all or nothing approach today. Anybody on the dissenting side of Commissioner Fielder's motion could make a motion to reconsider under Robert's rules. Am I correct?
Mr. President, anybody on the winning side of the vote, so the successful side of the vote
Correct.
can make.
Sorry, that's what I mean.
Correct.
It went down. So anybody on the winning side, on the prevailing side of that motion going down, basically. So it could make a motion to reconsider.
That's correct.
And Mr. President, as I
As long
recall,
as it's done today.
yeah, it would have to be done today. And my motion, I believe, only had 2 commissioners in support. It was Wellborn and Fielder, so it would be any of the other 3 commissioners that would be eligible to bring it back for reconsideration if some sort of interim relief was desired for the utility.
And thanks for a much better articulation of that, Madam Vice President. I may be slow, but I punch hard, so.
Yes, and for those that have expressed concern about the health of the utility, I guess that's a little bit of a hint that if that truly is a concern, they might want to bring that motion back for reconsideration.
It's certainly within their prerogative. Well, seeing no further discussion, we will move on to agenda item number 5. Actually, 4, which is, thank you very much. Appreciate you guys. Next, we have a commission initiated a litigation status update to provide updates on currently pending litigation to discuss strategy. Ms. Webster, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Amanda Webster, and I'm the Commission's interim Chief Legal Counsel. I am here to provide an update about currently pending Class D garbage litigation involving the Commission. I'm going to start with updates about publicly available case information in 3 separate cases. Then I'll request that the chair close the final segment of this work session to allow the Commission and staff to discuss confidential litigation strategy. First, at the end of December, the Montana Supreme Court issued its final decision in the Nolan versus State case. Parker Nolan applied to the Commission a few years ago for Class D motor carrier authority. After withdrawing his Class D application, Nolan sued the state under the Uniform Declaratory Judgments Act, seeking to declare 2 provisions of the Montana motor carrier law unconstitutional under the Montana Constitution and the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The district court in Flathead County concluded Nolan does not have standing to bring the as-applied constitutional challenge, and further that the challenged Montana statutory provisions are not facially unconstitutional. And the decision issued in December, the Montana Supreme Court decided two issues. First, that the district court was correct in denying Nolan's as-applied challenge for lack of standing. And second, that the district court was incorrect in denying Nolan's facial challenge. When I talk about a facial challenge, that means that the statute would be unconstitutional on its face. And as stated in the opinion, to be successful, Nolan would have to demonstrate that no set of circumstances would exist under which the statutes would be valid. So right now, the Nolan case is remanded back to the district court for further consideration on the facial challenge. Next, I have an update on the Allied Waste versus the Commission and MT Roll-Offs LLC. As you may recall, Allied is requesting judicial review of the Commission's final order 7980H in docket 2023.07.064, which approved MT Roll-Off's Class D authority to provide construction roll-off service in Yellowstone, Carbon, Stillwater, Musselshell, and Golden Valley counties. The parties in this case filed briefs in September and October 2025. The Commission filed a reply brief. Now, oral argument in this case is presently scheduled for Monday, April 20th, 2026 at 1:30 p.m. in the Lewis and Clark County District Court before Judge Seeley. And my final update for you is about a new case, Allied Waste versus the Commission, regarding the Commission's grant of Class D authority to L&L Site Services to provide garbage service in certain portions of Flathead and Lake counties. Allied filed a petition for judicial review of the Commission's decision in docket 2025.08.060 in the Lewis and Clark County District Court, and the matter has been assigned to Judge Menahan. L&L has filed a motion to intervene in the case, which has not yet been ruled on, and Allied filed an application for preliminary injunction, temporary restraining order, and order to show cause. Staff is currently preparing the administrative record for the case to be submitted to the district court tomorrow. So at this time, I'd like to request that the Commission go into closed session to discuss confidential litigation strategy under Montana Code annotated 2-3-2034. The presiding officer of any meeting may close a segment of the meeting during the time that discussion relates to matters of litigation strategy regarding litigation with private parties, and the presiding officer determines that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect on the agency's litigating position. So the three cases I just discussed all involve litigation with private parties. So in my opinion, continuing an open session would harm the Commission's litigating position by making public staff's legal advice to the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. And based upon Ms. Webster's request to discuss confidential litigation strategy with the Commission, I agree that continuing an open session would harm our Commission's litigating position. Maintaining confidentiality of the Commission's attorney's analysis is essential to obtaining candid legal advice, which in turn allows the Commission to make fully informed decisions about the agency's litigating position. Under circumstances, I determine that the public closure of the next part of the work session is proper under Montana Code annotated 2-3-203, subsection 4. Additionally, the final work session on today's agenda is Commission-initiated personnel matter in nature. This work session was publicly noticed as a discussion of the job performance of agency employees. I expect the entire discussion will also relate to matters of individual privacy. In this instance, I determine that the demands of the individual privacy clearly exceed the merits of public disclosure. I also determine that the public closure of the final work session of the day's agenda is proper under Montana Code annotated 2-3-203, Part 3. Again, the closed sessions are limited to discussion of confidential litigation strategy and confidential personnel matters only. There will be no web or audio feed during the closed sessions. Further, the Commission will not be making any public decisions during closed sessions. For the sake of efficiency, we will adjourn and close today's business meeting at the conclusion of the closed sessions and will not be returning to the public session. Are there any closing announcements?
Mr. Chairman,
Mis-
question. Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
are we going to go to the commissioner's room, or are we just going to shut this down and stay here and do this?
we're going to go to the other room, I believe, are we not? Is that what you had in mind?
President Wellborn, I was intending to go to the other room to set up a presentation for the closed session.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. President,
Yeah, go ahead.
you may already have this on your schedule to announce that we do not have a business meeting next week. And so the commission's next business meeting is February 17th. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you. So I can go ahead and reiterate that, yes, there is no business meeting, no business to take care of next week. So we will reconvene on February 17th, 2 weeks from today. The time is 3:28 p.m. The commission will now take a 15-minute break before going into class session.